Hi everybody, welcome to the Therm O Web YouTube channel. My name is Audrey Yeager and today I'm going to be sharing with you a couple cards I made with some stamps and dies from Waffle Flower Crafts. And I absolutely love the patterns from these stamp sets and die sets, and I wanted to combine them with some Therm O Web products to make a couple cute cards. So I am going to start by making my backgrounds. I am using the Gina K white cardstock, which comes in 8.5 by 11. So I just cut those in half to so I can create two cards from them. And I'm using the Gina K little inks here. And all I'm doing is kind of putting the inks right on my ink block, my stamping block rather, and then giving it a little spritz with water and then pushing it really hard onto my background paper. Now, I liked that. I thought it was pretty, but it didn't get the coverage that I wanted. And this is not watercolor paper, so I think it would absorb much better if it were a watercolor paper. But you know, I'm just experimenting and playing around. It's kind of fun to see what these products do with different techniques. So that's really what I'm trying to do here. So this time I sprayed my paper a little bit ahead of time and then pressed my block down, and that gave a little bit better coverage. But again, still not the complete coverage that I was looking for. I didn't like all the little white splotches in there, but it does have its, you know, it does have a purpose if you want a look like that. So then I decided to try to use the ink pads just as watercolor. So I just dabbed them on my craft mat and I grabbed some water in a watercolor brush, and I'm lightly just adding some water right to the ink pad stamp areas on my craft mat and just going through with my watercolor brush and adding the color here and there and just kind of, you know, putting different colors. I'm trying not to mix opposite colors in the color wheel, like not trying to mix the pink and the green, for example, because they will kind of blend and make it kind of look a little muddy. So I did that technique, and then I went to the packaging technique, and this technique ended up being my favorite because it gave me the coverage that I wanted. It didn't leave a ton of white space, and the colors were so bold and beautiful and just covered so completely. It was just so pretty. So all I'm doing here is taking a piece of packaging from some scrapbooking supplies, dabbing the inks right on, spritzing it with a little water, and then spreading it right onto my background. And like I said, I'm just experimenting here with some of these colors and some of these techniques. Then I'm just going to go through each of these kind of backgrounds I made and splatter some of the watercolor droplets on it just to add a little bit more interest. I do go back over some of these here and cover up a little bit of the white just with my paintbrush and fill in the background a little bit more with some color to make the color kind of pop out a little bit more. So I've put those to the side to dry for a little bit with the help of my heat gun, and I decided to use some of the Gina K dies, which there are stitch circles and double stitch circles and squares as well. And you see I'm kind of positioning. I just cut a piece of the watercolored paper, not the now watercolored paper, and that will fit in that circle die. And I've stamped with the Waffle Flower stamp with some Versamark, and just going to go over it with some white embossing powder. And then I'm just going to heat emboss that with my heat gun. So I'm only getting a portion of the image here. I didn't use the entire stamped image. I just want a little bit that's going to go in the portion of the circle that I will die cut out here in a minute. I just love when embossing powder melts under a heat gun. It's just like magic. And because, you know, when you put the powder on at first, you're like, oh, I don't know how this is going to look. You still can't tell, but once it starts melting right into that image, it just comes out so pretty. And I love the white against the watercolor background. I used this particular watercolor piece of all the techniques I did because I felt it was the most bold in terms of color, and I thought the white would stand out. You know, and have good contrast against the colored background compared to like that other one up in the top left of the screen that has a lot of the white splotches. You wouldn't have seen the white embossing very clearly on that. So I definitely had to go with one that was full of some color in the background. So I also, one of the other stamps in this set has a little chicken on it and another little bird, and then another little stamp as well as a little butterfly. And I'm going to use some of the scraps from the watercolor paper and stamp those images. I just want the butterfly on this piece, and I just want the chicken on this other piece here. And I'm going to fussy cut out this chicken once I had heat embossed it with my white powder. And I'm just going to cut around the lines. And because it's heat embossed, the lines are a little kind of rough around the edges. They're not very sharp, but that's okay because you can kind of make it up as you cut along. And if you cut a little bit too much, it's a little forgiving if you overcut. And my plan is to kind of pop this chicken up off the background once I cut that flowery portion out with the die. And I decided that I needed something else that's going to be on the other side of the circle. So I also stamped the other little bird that's in this stamp. This stamp set, by the way, is called Enveloper Little Birdie Stamp, and it is an image that is created by an artist, illustrator named Helen Dardick. Now, I happen to know of Helen Dardick ahead of time because I have already was a big fan of her work, and I actually made a quilt inspired by her work, but that's a totally different project. But anyway, I just love her illustrations. You should definitely go check out her blog and her Instagram. She has just amazing patterns. So I've cut out the little chicken, fussy cut that out. I die cut my circle there with my Big Shot, and again, I'm just having the flowers go along the bottom of the circle, and now I'm going to fussy cut out. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't stamp the bird. I first stamped this flower and then fussy cut this out, and I was going to have this to the left of the circle, but then I did go back and change my mind, and I fussy cut a bird as well. It was hard getting those little bits in there with the little tiny kind of points coming off the flower, the tips coming off the flower, but because the embossing powder was on there, it kind of made it a little bit more sturdy, so it wasn't as likely to rip or tear as I was cutting. So I am just taking, again, another sheet of that Gina K cardstock and going to fold it into my card shape. And this is going to be a pretty simple card design. I want the color to stand out and the image, and I'm just going to put a short and sweet sentiment on there here eventually. And that's going to be about it. I decided that I liked how the butterfly was stamped on the card background, the circle background rather, but I thought that since I have the chicken cut out and then a flower cut out to the left, that I should maybe stamp a butterfly. So I stamped one, and I'm going to pop that off with some pop dots. So now I'm going to do the same kind of technique, except this time I'm just going to use a plain black ink. I'm not going to heat emboss with white. So I took one of the other watercolor kind of areas that I did. This is the one I did with the paintbrush and just brushed it on. I first dabbed my stamp with some Versamark because I feel like it helps your ink stick better. And then I inked my stamp up and then just stamped part of the image right across the circle. And again, same design as the last card. I'm going to stamp a couple of the areas of the stamp to fussy cut out. And again, I'm using the chicken and the flower for this side. Yeah, the Versamark, using the Versamark with an ink definitely makes the image much more crisp than I think stamping with just plain ink, especially on new stamps. I think sometimes new stamps have to get a little worn in, so I think that using the Versamark helps that. Okay, so that's all done. I used my Gina K die again, the circle die, and cut out the circle area where the flower stamp is. Fussy cut out my chicken, and then I put the little flower to the side, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment right on the background here. So I did the same thing with the Versamark and my black ink, and you're just getting a great shot of my head. I just wanted to make sure that my sentiment was lined up perfectly over my circle. And again, a nice crisp stamp there. And when I had stamped the flower stamp on the background, I I noticed that the flower all the way to the left in the circle was the same flower that I fussy cut out, and I didn't like that. So I do go back, and instead of using that flower I fussy cut out, there you can see on my desk, I use the other bird on the stamp set and fussy cut that out. I use some sticky dot sheets, which are one of my favorite products for adhering something flat to a background, especially something that has an intricate design. I know this circle isn't a really intricate design, but like if you're using a die cutting machine, I love using the sticky dot sheets for that. And I'm using the 3D foam adhesives to pop off my other little bits off the page. So I popped off that chicken, and here I decided again to stamp the other bird on this stamp set instead of the flower, just so I could have another bird. And I thought it would be kind of cute having that little sentiment saying a little birdie told me, and kind of having it look like two little birdies were discussing something important. So when I was fussy cutting out my butterfly, the antenna got cut off because they were very tiny and very difficult to cut. But I noticed that the flower, the little kind of pistils of the flower there, were the same shape as the antenna. So I just cut 2 pistils off the flower and I glued them onto the butterfly, and it was perfect. They looked like little antenna. So that worked out well. When I stamped the birds, by the way, I tried to stamp on different areas of the watercolor that was kind of a contrasting color to what the background area was, so that they wouldn't blend in too much to the background. I'm not sure why I didn't assemble this card earlier, but I'm going back now and using my white heat embossed background. Again, I use the sticky dots to adhere the circle part down. I'm using the foam dots to pop off the chicken, and I am using the flower on this particular card. And I didn't want to go back over with a stamp and heat emboss again for a sentiment, so I just dug through my stash and I found some white stickers and added a sentiment, which you'll see later. So now for some of those other kind of watercolory papers I made, I have another little tiny flower die here, and I am going to punch a whole bunch of these from this watercolor kind of paper that I made with the Gina K inks. And I had a little bit of trouble at first. I think it was because my paper was a tad bit wet still, and you can see me there. I'm going back through it with my heat gun, and it didn't cut quite cleanly all the way through. I did actually have to go back and add in I have some craft foam, and I added some craft foam underneath my plates just to provide a little bit of surface, a little bit more height of the surface, and then the die cut much better once I add the craft foam in the background. So I cut 5 of those out for my card, and I punched out all the little bits on the inside. And I'm going to put those aside for now. I'll come back to those. And this was one of my, the final kind of watercolory background I made. This is what I did with a smooshing technique where you ink the packaging and smush it onto the paper. And I wanted to add some gold to it. So I took some DecoFoil liquid adhesive and a dry brush. I probably should invest in a new 1-inch brush. That one's a little rusty there. And I just added a really light swipe of gold. And look at that gold in the bottom there. That's so pretty. And I went over my watercolor. I just wanted this to be kind of a real messy, real light foiled look. And I'm taking the flowers that I die cut out and I put them over the foil background, and I didn't love it. I felt that when I did that, you didn't really see the color and the shape of the die cuts very well. So I resorted back to just a plain white background. So I glued those on with the mixed media liquid adhesive, and then I added some tiny drops of that DecoFoil liquid adhesive to each of the tips of the pistils and went over it with the gold foil here. And you can see I'm just rubbing it over with my thumb, just on the little tips, and that just added some really nice detail to each of the flowers and just added a little bit of sparkle, and I just love how that came out. Then I went back with some rub-ons that I had and added a little sentiment on the top. I I got a little bit of foil. Some of the glue that I had used to glue down the flowers hadn't completely dried yet, some of the liquid glue, and some of the gold foil stuck to it. So I just went through with a pair of scissors and kind of scraped it off, and it came off. For this card, I'm mounting this piece of watercolored background here to just a white card base, also with the Gina K cardstock there. And you can see I have cut out these shapes. These are from a Waffle Flower die. I forgot to show you me cutting these out with my die cutting machine, but these are a Waffle Flower die. These are absolutely beautiful. They're such intricate flowers. They're so gorgeous. They could be flowers, but they could be snowflakes as well, and there's just a lot of possibilities with these. So here is a great use of these sticky dots, as I mentioned earlier. Using, when you have a very intricate cut like this, you don't want to go through and glue every single line with a liquid adhesive, and you don't want your glue to show through the background. So using these sticky dot sheets, just placing it on, it picks up the adhesive from the sheet only on the area where your cut is, and then you can stick it right down. So very simple way to adhere items to a page or a card. I was just playing around with the arrangements of the shapes here. I wasn't quite sure. I like to do things in odd numbers, and I really couldn't get 5 to fit very well on this page, so I just went back with a 4, and that worked out well. So here are a couple shots of all the finished products and some details. So I hope you enjoyed this. These stamp sets are super, super cute, and the dies are just beautiful as well, and I love doing some of these watercoloring techniques with the Gina K inks. So please go check out the Therm O Web blog for a lot more inspiration with the Waffle Flower products this week. Thank you so much for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed, and let us know if you have any questions. Have a good day.